I invite you to stand for the reading of the gospel. This passage comes from Matthew 25, verses 31 through 46. And Jesus is speaking to the crowd and says, "When the Son of God comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people from one another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep at his right hand and the goats at the left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, 'Come, you who are blessed by God, inherit the realm prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?' And the king will answer them, 'Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me.' Then he will say to those at his left hand, 'You are the accursed. Depart from me into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not give me clothing. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me.' Then they will answer, 'Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not take care of you?' Then he will answer them, 'Truly I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me.' And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life." Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. There is a grainy video on YouTube that I saw once which really impacted me. In fact, you have a screen capture of that video on the front of the bulletin today. It's a video shot in a Washington, D.C. metro or subway station. It looks like security camera footage is shot from really high up. And in the video, a man dressed in black wearing a baseball cap goes near the main entrance to a station where many people will walk past him, and he takes out a violin from its case, places the case at his feet, open, ready for donations. The man tunes the violin and begins to play from memory with incredible passion and skill. Commuters and tourists alike walk past him, about 1,000 people. Some stop for a moment to listen. Some even lean over and drop $1 in the case. Mostly, they just walk by him. There was one child who lingered, who was mesmerized by the playing of the violin, but then his mother prevailed on him and tugged at him, and eventually they went to catch their train. None of that really makes this a remarkable story. There are musicians and performers in the subway all the time. Some of them are pretty good. But this man was not just another musician. He happened to be Joshua Bell, the world-renowned violinist who was born just down the road here in Bloomington and who studied violin at the Indiana University Jacobs School of Music. This video was actually a little experiment which a journalist from the Washington Post came up with, and he suggested to Mr. Bell, who agreed to do it. Mr. Bell made less than $50 in tips from commuters who walked by him for the 45 minutes that he played the violin, even though people had paid an average of $100 to buy a ticket to hear him perform in the previous evening at a concert hall nearby. And what's more, Mr. Bell was playing with a Stradivarius violin, which was made in 1713, which is valued at $3.5 million. The question is, so what accounts for the fact that he got such meager attention? Certainly, classical music is not everybody's cup of tea. And he played in a location which was not ideal for acoustics or performance. And besides the fact that people were in a hurry, they're not going to stick around as they're going to work or to see the sights in D.C. And I think that may have contributed to the lack of attention. But there's more than that. I think they just didn't really see him. They had no idea that for a few seconds they were hearing exquisite, world-class music played as masterfully as any professional violinist on an instrument that was nearly 300 years old. Which of course raises a broader question. Do we really see people for who they are? Do we really see them for what they bring? Maybe a few hundred feet from where Mr. Bell stood, there may have been a person sitting on a bench waiting for the bus or waiting for the subway, crying. Why was he so upset? Or maybe another person was asking for change. What really has driven this woman to those circumstances? Or maybe it's simply a fellow subway passenger nearby whose clothing and demeanor are hiding deep inside their anxieties, their dreams, their talents, their failures, their humor, or their cynicism. The question is really, are we able to see them? A friend tells me that when he traveled in South Africa, he learned the greeting in the Zulu language. When you see someone, when you meet someone on the street, the greeting is Sawubona, which translates to, I see you. After the greeting comes the response, which is Gikona, which means I am here. Oh, it makes our English greetings feel so superficial. Hey, what's up? And yet, here is an opportunity to say something profound. I suppose it would be close to the English, it's good to see you. And I imagine even in Zulu, those very profound greetings could become routine, but I marvel at the respectful nature of what they say to one another when they come across one another on the street. They acknowledge the person that is right before them. They validate that person. I see you because you're a valued human being. And the response is equally powerful because that person makes him or herself ready for conversation, ready for interaction. I am here. I am here to be seen. I am here because I matter. In today's gospel passage, the story which Jesus tells us turns on whether or not people are able to perceive their fellow human beings fully. The scene is one which is at once comforting and disturbing. If we take the story at its most evident meaning, it deals with who gets rewarded and who gets punished by God. In general, that's just a hard concept theologically to deal with. Not so much because we don't think that there are consequences for behavior, but because when we read the Bible, and especially the witness of Jesus himself, there's a sense of God's grace and God's love that is more than we could ever dream of or imagine. And so it's hard to reconcile that sense of God's love with an image of a God who intentionally declares that there's a limit to that love and that forgiveness. So if we for a moment could hold that aspect in tension and focus on the other part of the passage, we might be able to see some of the hopeful message that Jesus is speaking about. Jesus is laying out clearly that faithfulness in action is what God is after. All the people in the story had encountered people in need. The ones needed food, water, clothing, the ones who were in their sick bed, the stranger in our midst, and the ones languishing in prison. All had encountered them. Just not all of them truly had seen them. Those who were able to see the individuals in need saw them as fellow human beings, acted in a way that validated not just their current plight, but validated their humanity. And what's more, I believe it's impossible to see a person fully without seeing both their needs and their giftedness. In that sense, simply giving charity without engaging the whole person falls short of our task. Truly seeing the person struggling with hunger or illness or isolation means also lifting up the gifts that they bring and that they share with the community. Those people who are in need, referred to by Jesus, are not defined by their external condition. Oh, here's a convict. But rather they are defined by the nature and the giftedness which God has given them. I see you, my brother. I am here, a full human being, my sister. That calls for way more than just a passing exchange with someone. Way more than just slowing down just enough to drop $1 on a violinist's case in a subway. But it calls for sticking around, standing for a while, taking in the moment, offering a word of encouragement, being impacted by the interchange. That is a complex and demanding threshold. That isn't faith phoned in, but it is rather faith in relationship. This threshold of faith and relationship is meant to apply to the whole world. Did you notice this is not just Jesus talking about Christians? It's for the nations. It's for everyone involved. And for those who may wish to draw the circle of approved people to include only the ones who follow my religion or even just my flavor of Christianity, Jesus is saying that the way God sees us is not through a lens of dogma, but a lens of faith in relationship. I had the privilege recently of being a part of a panel at our local New Tech High School. And I was with panelists representing 6 other world religions. And we were speaking to about 150 students. There were questions being asked of us by the students, and there was one question asked by one of them. She asked the panelists, what is something that brings all of your religions together? And each one of us answered that question with some version of love one another. We go about our life in danger of not seeing each other. And what's more, we are in danger of denying the humanity in us and in the person that might be before us. The clear challenge for me, both in the parable and in the Zulu greeting, is that we are called to be in relationship. It's messy business, faith and relationship. It's not private piety between me and my Jesus, but it's a public engagement of our personal beliefs. It is a public embodying of the love of God in our lives shared beyond us. It prevents us from ever saying, oh no, that's none of my business. I can't get involved. Because it is our business as a community to listen to each other and be there for one another, to rejoice with those who rejoice, to mourn with those who mourn, to sit at table so that there will be no hungry person going to bed tonight, and to visit with those who are in jail, looking forward to a time of reuniting as a part of a community. That morning at the DC Metro station, walking past Joshua Bell was a missed opportunity. It is likewise a missed opportunity today if we walk past our neighbor without truly seeing them as a full person, with the strengths that they bring, with the needs that need support. Faith in relationship is inspiring and heartbreaking, both. But it is real. The risk of caring is the risk of being a human being. And what's more, it's the risk of being created in the image of God. Each one of us walking around with a name tag that says, I am made in God's image. When you see me, you are seeing Jesus. Jesus says to us, I see you. And with gratitude we can reply, I am here. I hope this week you will share either out loud or in your mind that greeting of I see you with people you come across this week. Say it in your mind or say it out loud, knowing that Jesus says it. Say it and see them and stick around to hear the melody of the story of their life. Thanks be to God for God's word for us. Amen.